I had just put Emily to bed. The house finally fell silent, the air conditioner was running, and somewhere the refrigerator hummed quietly. I was barely standing on my feet and dreamed of just collapsing on the couch when a sharp doorbell rang. I flinched. It was almost 10 in the evening. I wasn't expecting anyone. "Who's there?" I asked without opening the door. "Please open up. It's important," replied a confident female voice. I cracked the door open. Standing on the threshold was a woman about 30 years old, well-groomed, with perfect makeup, in an expensive coat. She smiled as if she hadn't come to a stranger's home, but to her own. "My name is Haley. I'm with William," she said, without even asking if she could come in. "He's busy, so I came alone. We need to talk." My stomach twisted inside. William is my ex-husband, Emily's father. We've been apart for a long time. He rarely shows up and pays child support regularly. That's all that connects us. "It's late now," I said coldly, "and I don't understand why you—" But she pushed the door with her shoulder and entered the apartment as if she had every right to do so. "This won't take long," she tossed over her shoulder. We ended up in the kitchen. Out of habit and politeness, I offered, "Coffee?" "No need," she replied, not even glancing at me. She didn't sit down. Instead, she started inspecting the apartment. She went into the living room, peeked into the bedroom, then the nursery. With the toe of her shoe, she pushed aside Emily's toy car, opened the closet, ran her finger along the shelves. "What are you doing?" My voice trembled. She came out into the hallway, stood opposite me, and calmly said, "William gave me this apartment." I blinked. "Excuse me? What?" "In 2 weeks, the designer will arrive. We're planning renovations," she continued in the same tone, "so I ask you to move out by then." My breath caught. "What do you mean, gave?" I asked again. "I live here with my daughter. This is our home." She shrugged. "This is my apartment now, and you with a child doesn't interest me." My hands started shaking. A lump rose in my throat. "Get out of my house immediately," I said, opening the door. "You'll regret it if you complicate things," she threw as she left. "William will confirm everything." I slammed the door and immediately dialed William's number. My heart was pounding so hard that I could barely hear the tones. "Are you out of your mind?" I blurted out as soon as he answered. "Some woman came and said you gave her our apartment." There was a pause on the other end. Then he said evenly, almost without emotion, "Yes, the apartment is mine. I transferred it to Haley." "You knew your daughter lives here," I whispered. "That's no longer my problem. You need to move out." He said it so casually, as if discussing the weather. "You have enough with alimony. I pay it on time." His voice on the phone was cold and confident. "With that money, you can rent something. A small studio, for example." I gripped the phone so hard that my fingers turned white. "William, wait. We agreed," I said in a trembling voice. "You promised yourself that I could live here with our daughter until the end of her school. We discussed it, remember?" He sighed heavily, as if I were an annoying problem. "Darling, times change. Circumstances too." Pause. "You have 2 weeks left. That's it." The connection was cut. At that moment, the ground literally slipped from under my feet. I slowly sank onto the couch and stared at the nursery for a long time. Amelia was sleeping peacefully, hugging her plush rabbit, her breathing even and quiet. She didn't know that our world had just collapsed. The same questions swirled in my head. What to do? Where will we live? How to explain this to her? I sat in the kitchen all night. The clock ticked too loudly. I cried, trying not to sob so as not to wake my daughter. I opened the laptop, started calculating money, alimony, small savings, my occasional part-time jobs. The numbers didn't add up. The money was barely enough for groceries, let alone rent in this area. I didn't even call my parents. They live on pension themselves, barely making ends meet. There was no help to be expected from anywhere. 2 days later, my former mother-in-law came. Our relationship was always strained. Politeness without warmth, conversations without sincerity. But she adored Amelia. Once a week, she came to us, spent the whole day with her granddaughter, took her to the park, read books, baked cookies, and I tried to handle my affairs in the meantime. She looked at me closely and frowned. "You look awful. Pale, swollen eyes. What happened?" And suddenly, I broke down. I told everything about Haley's visit, about the unexpected call from William, about his words, about these 2 weeks. The words tumbled out on their own, as if I had held them inside for too long. She was silent for a long time, too long. Then she slowly said, "This is, of course, his right." She hesitated, choosing words. "But to act like this is wrong, especially towards the child." She stood up, took her bag. "I'll try to talk to him," and left. And I was left even more confused than before. On one hand, a tiny hope appeared. Maybe she can influence him. After all, he's her son. On the other hand, the fear only grew stronger. If not, if the conversation changes nothing, what then? A week passed. Boxes stood in the apartment. In them was all our life: children's toys, school notebooks, photos, clothes. I carefully labeled each one, as if that could bring order to the chaos inside me. But I still hadn't decided on housing. I didn't know where to go. A few days later, as I was knee-deep in packing, surrounded by towering stacks of cardboard boxes filled with our clothes, toys, and memories, my mother-in-law, Margaret, showed up unannounced. I met her in the hallway of our old apartment building, the one in the bustling Edgewater neighborhood where rents were skyrocketing. She stopped dead in her tracks, her eyes widening like saucers as she took in the chaos: the half-empty shelves, the bubble wrap scattered everywhere, and the "for sale" sign peeking through the window from a neighbor's unit. "Karen, stop right there," she said, her voice a mix of shock and determination. "You're not going anywhere. How on earth did you pack all this so fast? I don't understand. William told me—" She trailed off, rummaging through her oversized purse, the kind Midwestern grandmas carry everywhere, stuffed with tissues, mints, and now, apparently, life-changing paperwork. She pulled out a thick folder and thrust it into my hands. "Here, this is yours now. The apartment, it's officially in your name." My knees buckled, and I had to lean against a box to steady myself. I flipped open the documents with trembling fingers: deeds, title transfers, notary stamps, and there it was, William's signature, crisp and final, alongside Margaret's. It all checked out. Turns out the place had never really been his. Back when we were married, he deeded it over to his mother to dodge taxes and hide assets during some shady business deals he thought I didn't know about. But Margaret? She'd known everything. She was the one who'd quietly held on to the property all these years, watching her son's schemes unfold. She'd cornered him the week before, laying it all out in that no-nonsense way only a tough Chicagoan like her could. "You either sign this over to Karen and Amelia, bump up those child support payments to something decent, like enough for private school tuition and dance lessons, or I spill the beans on every single one of your little tax evasions and offshore accounts. And you know I have the receipts, William. I've got friends at the IRS who owe me favors." He'd caved, of course. What choice did he have against his own mother? Tears streamed down my face as the reality sank in. It felt like a dream, a good one for once. I threw my arms around Margaret,
hugging her so tight I could smell her familiar rose-scented perfume. "Thank you," I sobbed, kissing her cheek. "Thank you so much. I don't know what to say." She patted my back, her eyes misty, but her voice steady. "Honey, you don't have to say a thing. That boy's my son, but he's been a fool. Emilia deserves a real home, not some motel room or basement rental. And if it means going up against my own flesh and blood, so be it." In that moment, I realized something profound. Emilia might not have a present father. William had checked out long ago, more interested in his flashy cars and late-night business meetings than bedtime stories. But she had a grandmother who was the real deal, fierce, caring, and willing to move mountains. Margaret had chosen her granddaughter over her son, proving that family isn't always about blood, it's about who shows up when it counts.